Great. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Risom. I'm a partner and chief innovation officer at Gale. And I'd like to welcome you all for being online. There's a few spattering of us here in person, but hopefully there's lots of you out there, or it doesn't matter if there's lots or not. Hopefully those who are there will enjoy themselves for the next hour and 15 minutes. This is the last of 7 events, actually. City Life in the Times of and after Corona. Who knows if that after will be upon us, maybe sometime soon. That's brought into collaboration through Design and Architecture Norway, the Danish Design Center, Gale, the Center for Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies, Urban Agenda, and BLOXHUB. So those are the folks that have brought this together, but it's really, we have 4 very interesting guests that'll be the main stars of the show today. So beginning with Imran Rashid and Lars Spindler. Basically, we have a very broad sort of agenda to talk about, and I want to try to tap into some of your expertise. In general, we want to explore the future. Future of cities, future of technology, future of how these things come together in terms of health and in terms of how we live our lives. And of course, we can't talk about the future without saying what we've learned, hopefully through COVID, and how this might catalyze either a whole new era of tools and practices, or it might just strengthen some of the things that we've been doing already. Mm-hmm. So that's the main broad topic. And like I said at the beginning, we'll start with you two for about 15 or 20 minutes. And then we'll transition over to Ursula and Nick, which I'll introduce when they come up. And then we'll have all 4 people up here to cross-germinate some of our discussions. So now, I can start with you, Imran. Rashid, you're a physician and a serial tech entrepreneur, amongst a few things. So you haven't had nothing to do with those 2 hats on the last 8 months, right? Or what have you been up to?
I'm also a physician, so I've had a lot of things to do. But I'm also an author. So basically, what I've been doing for the last 8 or 10 months have been to look at the world and how it's evolving, how it's imploding, and try to figure out what's basically going on. What does this crisis teach us about being human in a digital world, basically? That's what I've been looking into. And I started my own project because, being a doctor, you can't just call someone and tell other people in the Corona lockdown that, hey, I feel lonely. Do you want to talk to me for an hour? But what you can do is that you can call people and tell them that, hey, I just made a new podcast. Do you want to participate? And yes, and that's exactly the same that happened. They talked to me for an hour. We just called it a podcast. And
so you've had these conversations with your patients?
No. This was all kinds of people I talked to for the last, because I was, just like everyone else, I was wondering that a lot of things are going on, but we are all living through this by ourselves. Why don't we try and reflect upon what's happening to try and understand this? And that's what I've been doing for the last 8 months, where I've had more than 80 guests for an hour and talked to them in a podcast series that I made. And that's really been interesting.
Because you've been pretty critical, or you've been trying to, I think, draw attention to the fact that maybe some of our digital behavior has not been healthy, hasn't been good for our health for many years, right? And so now do you see a situation where are we becoming more or less healthy through this?
Yeah, well, so it's been very interesting for me to see how the digital possibilities has been there and hasn't been enough for humans. No one is going to ask for more screen time after the Corona crisis, right? But it has also taught us that it's not enough to have screens to cover the human needs. And still, again, I think you can see that the tech giants have been exploding their profits throughout the Corona time. So again, I have to repeat the question that I've been trying to find out for the last 5 or 10 years. Are tech meant to be serving humans, or are humans basically today serving tech?
And so has COVID changed that directory? Are we more subservient to technology than...
It's been more clear for us that tech is not the answer to everything. Humans are. Only if humans are able to make conscious choices.
But we can imagine, so if I would play devil's advocate for that, if this pandemic struck the world even 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to work with the same efficiency. We wouldn't have been able to carry on business as usual for a lot of businesses without the technology that we have today. So you might say that technology has served us to an extent, or is that just an illusion?
It's an illusion, in my opinion, because I mean, there's never been a point in time where you've had more things to worry about and access to more things to worry about. I mean, just take Donald Trump's Twitter account. Just as one lifestyle factor, how many people have had high blood pressure due to that one Twitter account, right? That's just one example. But just the access to information is not necessarily a good thing, because basically our ability to process information is like down to 6 things at a time, because our work memory is just so not well working. So what we need to do is to be able to relax and be social, and that we do not have to build a world that we can't keep up with. That's what the digital world basically is. It's a thing you have imagined, but it's still running our lives as if we were like puppets. Okay, we got to come back to that, because I think we might have another point of view from Lars Spindler. You're a technologist, I would say, associate partner, digital strategy at IBM. I could imagine you might have a little bit different take on technology's role to make people's lives better, or how do you feel about some of the issues that Imran has raised?
I mean, our point of view in working with technology and new digital solutions is that we need to understand the user first, right? And then we need to apply technology so we are solving real user problems. In IBM, we do this with a method called IBM design thinking, which forces us to have that perspective on everything we do. And I mean, what I can see is happening during COVID-19 is an acceleration of the focus on sustainability and being able to control your supply chain. If you look at food, for example, with IBM, we have a solution called IBM Food Trust, which allows you to actually understand the journey of where your product is coming from, right? It might be the opposite side of the globe. So by companies contributing, putting up data about the journey of that product, you as a consumer can actually see where it's coming from, and you can trust that information. So more and more focus. So
when you say coming from, we can understand if it says that it's coming from South Africa, we know that to be true. Is that what you mean? Or if it says that it's organic, we can verify that, or explain more about we know where it comes from.
With Food Trust is based on blockchain technology, right? So it means that it allows the different participants in the supply chain to share information about the journey of the product. You can then argue, yes, that what if someone puts something up which is not really organic? They say it's organic, what then, right? But then with Food Trust and the blockchain technology, you can actually trace it back to that entity, that participant, and say, okay, this is where the error occurred. Whereas in the world we're coming from, where everything is siloed, it's very difficult to do that, right? So if you have something you need to withdraw because it's harmful for people to consume, it's a very lengthy process today to actually investigate and understand and withdraw that product. And there are cases where you end up actually saying, okay, we cannot sell this product. There was a case in the US a couple of years back with romaine lettuce, where you found E. coli bacteria there, and you had to basically take it off the shelves in Walmart for I think 2, 3, 4 weeks, right, in all Walmart stores, right? So that led to a movement where, okay, we need to digitalize our supply chain. We need to be able to understand and be able to act on this much faster. And today they can actually do a trace on lettuce in 2 seconds, right? All the way back to the farm, right? So that's kind of what technology does. And obviously, I think...
And when you say they can do the trace, like the consumer or Walmart can do it? Or?
Walmart can do it at the moment. So there are
Yeah.
different perspectives on this. If you look at food trust and traceability, there are scenarios where you have companies like Walmart. They want to be able to control that, and they want to be able to optimize the supply chain. I mean, for a company like Walmart, it's also about selecting the best producers who has the best quality, optimizing food waste in the supply chain, because you can see where the produce is sitting in warehouses. You can also see on some produce where if the cold chain is broken, for example, you know that will impact the durability and the quality of the product. So some companies are using it just to optimize and understand, where you also have examples of companies where they're actually allowing the consumer to basically scan a QR code on a product, and then they can see where that product is from. So an example of this is Carrefour in France. They have done a pilot on this for chicken, for their own private label chicken, where consumers can basically scan and they can see the farm that this piece of chicken they're holding in their hands, where it's coming from. So obviously creating a lot of trust and transparency. There are also examples within coffee, where in the US, where you can scan a QR code on the coffee you prefer. You can see the community of coffee farmers that have grown this coffee. And you can actually also, with technology, you can tip them directly. So the money will go directly to that community of farmers to, again, emphasize sustainability, make sure that they can live sustainable lives.
Okay, wow. And so is this, have you seen some particular, sorry, Imran, I'll cut you off for just a second. Have you seen any particular COVID applications of this technology yet, or potential for food supply chains that might be fragile because of the virus, or is that not really developed yet?
I think this food trust started it years ago. Started it back in 2016, 17, where you had this big situation scandal with romaine lettuce in the US, and now it's kind of just growing bigger and bigger, right? So more and more awareness. I guess what we can see also is from a consumer point of view, IBM released a study in July 2020 here, where we asked roughly 20,000 consumers around the world about their preferences for how they want to shop and buy consumer products. And for the first time, we could see that sustainability is reaching what we call a tipping point. Sustainability is becoming very important to consumers. And 40% of all the consumers asked in the survey are now what we call purpose-driven. So they want to buy products that align with their personal values, whereas 41% are value-driven. So they're still looking for products at a good price point.
Yeah. So here you have a growing generation of people that care about this, and now you're providing the technology that allows them to not only be healthier themselves, but then also, like you're saying, even support certain farmers.
Yeah.
Sounds good, and you're user-centered. What could be the problem, Imran?
Well, humans are more than users. That's the problem. And the problem is also that if you ask a tech guy how to solve a problem, he'll see, well, it's either better tech or more tech or different tech. It's never no tech. And a lot of our human problems are basically other humans that needs to help us. So I think it's the polished version we're hearing here. But you're also not in the top 5 of the big tech giants, and it's not the good business models that are ruling the world today, because that QR code could just as well be put in the back of people's mind. And then you can track them to find out how their emotional needs can be served the best by putting direct like self-esteem boost selling or creating products. So you can actually turn people into those chickens you're talking about. And that's what the problem is today, that we're basically having big companies using humans to become better and bigger companies, and they're succeeding very well.
So you could take your analogy, because I thought of that being on humans as well, but I thought about tracking and tracing people with COVID, right? So we have our app that's come under a lot of criticism in Denmark, right, for being able to track and trace. But it sounds like you could have the perfect track and trace technology for people in terms of where they're going or not.
No, but that app you're talking about was criticized because it was overpriced and too expensive, and it didn't work.
Yeah.
But it was driven by the thing that both religion and tech is driven by, namely the promised land.
Yeah.
Buy this app, or there's an app for that, as Steve Jobs said, right? But what if you don't need an app?
Right.
What if you just need another human being? Then you can't get an app for that.
But
So,
if you want to know where your food's coming from,
yeah.
you
And-
might need an app for that.
And if,
Yeah, but can you hear yourself? Can you hear yourself?
Well, no, but I'm seriously question. I mean, the question.
You're really good. He's a user. We can talk to each other.
but can I just elaborate, right? Because I was just talking about food trust. There's also another technology which can actually help you as a user, as a consumer, to validate if this is really organic or olive oil. You asked that question,
Yeah.
right? Is it organic? There's also technology IBM has developed with IBM Research. We have a huge research organization with around 5,000 researchers around the world looking into new technology, what's possible, right? And they have developed a solution called IBM Crypto Anchor Verifier, which is basically
Crypto anger.
verifier, right?
Okay.
It's a magnifying glass. I'm putting this very black and white, right?
Yeah,
It's a magnifying glass you can put on your mobile phone, which allows you to take a picture of any substance, and then it will analyze it using pattern recognition, machine learning, and tell you if this is the right product, right? What you need to do first is you need to let the blockchain platform know, okay, this is the pattern for organic olive oil, for example, right? So when you then scan it the next time, it'll be able to tell you, is this right?
Yeah. And to your point, Imran, is like, I just don't need to know that. Or you think that's not going to generate any human happiness?
I mean,
or?
look, for the last 10 years or so, I've been like also struck with the tech bug. Not that kind of bug, but you know, the this is so really cool. Techsism. I call it techsism.
Yeah.
Basically, just like religion, some kind of, you know, ism.
Yeah.
That everything's going to be better just by this or that or this thing or that. It'll make your life better.
Yeah.
But it's basically just escapism in a new formula. This thing happened 500 years ago, just as well, where the Catholic Church also came and told people, buy this app or pay this money for these people, then you'll get a better life.
Yeah.
Where sign me up? That was the thing at that time, right? 500 years later, you turn Gutenberg into Zuckerberg. And we go from the spoken language to the written language and back to emojis.
Yeah.
That's not going forward, right?
Yeah.
This is the step back, and then from there, we have been 2 steps ahead, 1 step back, and now hopefully after the COVID crisis, we'll learn that human needs humans to get forward.
Yeah.
And not,
So I'm with you,
Yeah.
but so not to be too much of the technologist, but I mean, I
Yeah.
think there's also folks like Lars Spindler, I believe that's his name, Factfulness author.
yeah, Hans Rosling.
Hans Rosling, right?
Yeah.
There's Pink. Anyway,
Pinker? Pinker?
yeah.
Steven Pinker?
Stephen Pinker, thank you. Help me
Yeah.
out. I mean, these are folks that are saying we've never had it better, literally.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the world, we've never been happier, we've never been richer, we've never been better
More
off.
depressive, more lonely.
Okay, so that's how you. So
No, no.
when they say we've never had more of everything,
Yeah.
both happiness and loneliness.
And you know what the problem is?
Yeah.
We can't feel it.
Okay, we're numb.
Yeah, we're numb because we've based everything on rationalism.
Yeah,
But the problem is that humans are emotional human beings. You don't like if there's a kid crying and come up to you, you don't hand him out an app. You give him a hug.
you don't. I do, but you might.
Okay, you give him an app, right? Okay, that's probably the thing. If he cries, you don't give him an instruction manual how to stop crying. That's
Yeah,
what I mean.
you give him a
right?
hug, yeah.
You give him a hug because basically what we feel these days are the need for other human beings. It's not the need for more apps, right? I think everyone has discovered that there's no bottom in the Facebook feed.
Yeah, and so you yourself, you don't use any technology.
Of course I do.
Okay.
I'm a serial tech entrepreneur.
Okay.
Yeah, I do. Of course I do. But what I differ between is the consciously chosen tech and the emotionally driven tech,
Yeah.
which are 2 different things, right? You don't get addicted to a calculator.
Yeah.
If you do, come talk to me. I'm a doctor, right? But how could we make a calculator addictive? Well, you could just tell people every 5 times you use it, you'll win like $1,000. Then you'll see the calculator addictive things going on.
Right.
Is the moment where you use tech to like become like a remote control for emotional needs. If I feel lonely and a specific app is connected to that loneliness, if I feel bored, I use my app for getting rid of that boredness, etc. That's where I mean we're being hacked. There's a reason to why you, when you were a kid, we told people not to take candy from strangers. because then you lose your rational...
Now we take emotional
Now-
candy from
Exactly,
our,
from strangers who hide behind algorithms.
But do you think, is Lars selling emotional candy? I mean, I think when I heard this technology, the ability
Lars's
to...
company and other companies like Lars's, Microsoft, etc., they just banned any research in facial recognition. Why did you do that if tech is so well and good?
Well, but that's a tough one that maybe isn't. But let's
I mean,
take. But you're talking about blockchain. We're talking about blockchain and distributed networks is one of the aspects I understand this technology, Lars. You're saying, Imran, you're talking about an erosion of trust and erosion of human connection. And one thing are you saying, Lars, is this technology allows us to get more trust over an invisible system, our food system, and potentially have a connection as consumers to some of the folks, whether it be a farmer or whatever, that we're buying something from. So isn't that a different type of technology than the type that maybe Imran is arguing against? Is it a different type of technology?
I mean, to me, blockchain is the technology that creates transparency and hence trust, right? It also entails that you agree what kind of information you share. So all information put on blockchain is not shared. That's something you put into a smart contract, right? So it's not kind of like going into a candy store and you can just pick all the candy you want, right? There's a contract behind it, and there's a purpose behind it. I think that's what I find interesting, that now we have some technology, I mean, that can help us as consumers actually vote with our wallet, right? I mean, we have some challenges if you look at food on a global scale. We have 1 out of 10 people on a global scale are ill every year from foodborne diseases, right? We also have some challenges with a third of all the food we produce on a global scale is wasted, right? So now we have some technology that can help us optimize the supply of food, help us understand what is good, what is not so good, help us as consumers to actually say, we want to pay for that coffee because we trust those guys, we can see them, and we want to make sure that they have a sustainable life as well.
Right.
It allows us to understand also the journey, so we can start actually saying, we want to buy local produce because we want to reduce CO2 emissions. We don't want to support that transport from the other side of the globe, right? So I think it's kind of empowering us as consumers, which I think is the interesting part.
Can we figure this out, Imran? Can we have the best of both worlds? Can we get some of the benefits of technology that you're talking about while being able to control maybe the more manic, candy-driven part of our brain in terms of technology? Can we have both?
We can, but we have to... It starts the moment where we start betting on humans as the need or as the means to get a better world instead of just tech. I think tech is wonderful. I think there's a lot of tech out there, but one of the biggest issues at hand is that we perceive tech as being neutral. It's not. It's just like a knife. You can use it to like spread butter or kill people. That's blockchain is also a cool technology, but I mean it's also the way how drug dealers buy stuff on the dark web.
Right, it's organ, it's black organ farming.
Right?
It's
all those kind of things. So that's also blockchain. You can't just say that it's just because it's new, it's good. You have to say, I think it's humans who have to grow up and start basically acting like the humans we are instead of the humans we think we are. I mean, looking at how our brains and consciousness is built, it's wrong to call humans or describe humans as rational, intelligent, and conscious human beings when we aren't as much as we think we are. It's better, or it's more precise, to call us irrational, emotionally driven, habit-driven creatures that now and then happens to think.
Okay, good. So I like that. So what I want to do is, with that transition to this, what we are as humans, I actually want to ask you two to take a seat and introduce our next two guests who will maybe take us in a little bit different track. And you two will be back up here in just about 20 minutes.
All right.
While we do our little change, I also want to remind people that if you've gotten the link, if you've signed up for the for this webinar, so if you have questions or things you want to have us discuss or think about, then send it through and we'll be able to add it to the discussion. It's maybe someone's done that already. Not anyone's done that already. So we need some of that input, or otherwise we'll just keep on talking like we wish to ourselves. So the next two folks here, a different point of view. Ursula Scavenius. You're an author. an expert in dystopian future scenarios. I think we've already sort of been down that path a little bit here.
I don't call myself that, but somehow I am.
But that's how you got the title here.
Exactly.
And then Nicolas Arroyo, you're a partner and foresight director at Bespoke Copenhagen, a local design practice that you'll talk more about in a second. But so, Ursula, starting with you, this does sound, on the one hand, pretty potentially dystopian. On the other hand, this idea of being in touch with who we are as humans, what do you see, what are some of your thoughts about a post-COVID future?
Regarding what you were just talking about, I would just add a thing. I was thinking through the conversation about technology being this, pharmaca. It's like medication. It can be a cure, but it can also be poison. And that's what I think is crucial right now. And we have, it's different what is to say about adults and children. And what we should discuss is how to be responsible for the reality of the children. I'm thinking about that at the moment because I just read about Japan suicide wave, and it struck me how that the dystopia is somehow already here, because little children, 5-year-olds, say to the parents, "I would like to disappear. I would like to die." And a lot of school children already took action. Actually, 1,300 died from suicide in Japan and just 2,000 from COVID. So there you see that, just an example.
Whoa, okay, so sorry, say that again. So you're saying
this year, like,
more people have died from
a lot more
suicide?
Yes, exactly. So
than from COVID?
Yeah. So yes. So
in Japan?
Yeah, in Japan. And I don't know the details of how they have handled COVID-19, but I think it's interesting. Of course, it's something I have to research in, and already did before the virus was here, COVID-19 was here. And that's the interesting part of being, author. Interesting. It's the crucial element of being a writer, is that sometimes you listen to the language of a society and you try to interpret it, what's really going on. And sometimes you can already hear by the tone of the language in a society what's going on, what is the dilemma, what is the poison, the cure, is the struggle going on. It's going on in the language we speak.
So what are some of those struggles besides suicide?
Yeah, but it's about the tech also. It's about that we now have this choice to make it a cure or a poison, and we could make it more toxic. By the way, the tech industry is also, like oil industry, one of the ones giving the largest footprint on,
CO2 emissions.
CO2 emissions. So, and we never hear that when we talk about like the tech industry wanting to make a more sustainable world. So, but I was wondering, what would happen with me or with other people who said, "I don't want a smartphone. I want to live in a different way right now. Could I be criminal in 2 years? Would we be a group?" I have a little group where we're like, "Should we try not to have a smartphone for a month? Look, what's going to happen?" Yeah, we're trying it right now.
You're trying right now?
Yeah, I'm trying right now. So what would happen to me and us in 2 years or 3 years or 10 years if we say, "No, I don't want it back"? Could I not enter places? Would I not be recognized as a normal person? What would happen? And those kind of scenarios, of course, go around in my head. But
there's certainly, there's many digital services in Denmark. You're not just cell phone or smartphone dependent, but if you didn't have an NemID or
okay, I have
right.
Okay, so I'm not that. I have the many tools, but I don't have those that should help me through my mobile phone. I don't wear it on me. I can. Of course, I can. I'm still part of the society, but a lot of small tools that would help me. Actually, I live fine without until now.
Yeah.
But what will happen in the future? Can I still be a normal citizen? Do I have a choice whether I want to buy this product or not? Do I like was mentioned before? Am I human or am I a consumer, or am I a free consumer?
Yeah.
So those kind of things. is part of what I'm writing about now, but also the fiction book I was publishing in January, already there, and that's a little strange, was about infection and being afraid of others being infected.
Yeah.
So that was before, like, the
Before this all
outbreak.
happened, you were a little foresight there.
Yeah, I
So,
don't know.
Nick, I also want to turn to you for a moment, because some of the things that Ursula is talking about, whether it be the language that we describe our present day in, or trends like people giving up their smartphone for a period of time, this is some of the work that you do in terms of understanding language and trend spotting or foresight. So what are some of your thoughts on either Ursula's direct trend or other things that you see with COVID?
Yeah, I think, well, maybe we just wanted to refer to like the first conversation as well around technology, and I think I totally see that. I totally see that we have maybe forgotten that technology at the end is a tool that's supposed to serve us. I really like that saying of wouldn't it be sad to answer right the wrong question? And I think we have used technology as a way of solving right many questions. Not all of them really necessary or really needed.
So we might have gotten really good at doing the wrong thing.
Exactly, and especially
Yeah.
design has a lot of responsibility in that. You know, we as designers and how we're designing the systems, the tools, the cities around us, sometimes are too focused on the process and on the artifact, on like designing it beautifully. And I think we have developed tools and developed mindsets that allow us to like create great solutions. So like Uber is a great solution if you look at it as a platform, is brilliant. The thinking behind it and how it is executed, but we're not really kind of tapping into other issues that technology might be creating, modern slavery or unequal wages and things like that. That's why it's not surprising for me that tech companies today are hiring philosophers, thinkers, people from the social sciences to actually bring those questions back. So before we move too fast, before we design too fast and focus too much on the shiny object, actually knowing really what are we designing for, what are those things that maybe don't need a big technological solution, that maybe are more related to our human experience.
Yeah.
And it's maybe more about designing all the kinds of systems or solutions that can enhance that, right?
So are there some examples in which that's happening, or things that you are working with that might be the right answer to the right question?
Yeah, I think this year we've been working in very interesting fields. We have clients in all kinds of industries and fields, and for many different countries as well. And so one of the things that we've been working a lot is around work, and how work is changing, and our relationship to work is changing, especially during this time of COVID, but also looking forward, like what's going to happen afterwards. And one of the interesting things that we discuss a lot is what's going to happen with the office space, for example. More people working remotely, more tools being working really good. What's going to happen with this space with going to work, with the theater of work? I think that's something that we've been discussing a lot. And one of the biggest answers is like, hey, could work maybe become like a place that you're really excited to go to because you connect with other people? No computers,
The physical place.
The physical place,
Yeah.
like the physical office. Could that be the work that's, I really want to go to the office because I'm connecting with people here. There's no Zoom, there's no digital tools, there's no Slack. It's face to face. We are planning, we're discussing, we're sharing ideas. We are going for walks. We are, getting inspired by each other, inspiring other people. And could that be a change of mindset, for example? Before we were trying to get away from the office, and this idea of like work from anywhere at any time was kind of the promised land of work. Kind of like everybody wants to be flexible. And today you see more and more people that actually want to go back to the office because they realize that sitting in your kitchen is not as exciting or as meaningful as interacting with other people. And that's not a technological solution. Actually, that's removing technology.
Yeah.
That's actually, or finding the place where technology plays a really important role and is really necessary to perform certain tasks, but acknowledging that there are other things that we cannot replace with technology. And I think those thoughts are really interesting because that's going to shape and reshape how do we build, our office spaces, our homes. Could we see, for example, that companies will start investing less on their corporate building and more on your private home, for example. Things like that are kind of interesting thoughts that kind of we are.
Okay, so there's a couple interesting
massaging.
things there. So the first thing you're saying is that we might do some work from home, but then when we go into an office or whatever and we have physical contact, this whole crisis and situation might help us appreciate that contact. And so we're not distracted looking at our phone when we're talking to someone, but we cherish and enjoy that connection so much that we prioritize it a little bit more and know when we're using our digital tools and then value the physical connection.
Exactly. I think everybody can agree that like sitting 12 hours on Zoom is really, really annoying. And it's like you get fatigued and you get tired and it's not really conductive to good work. So I think, but it is a very wonderful tool and that allows you to collaborate across time zones and space and all of that, but it's not for everything. So I think we might see more focus on kind of like what are the best conditions to perform certain tasks. And if a task is about aligning, having a conversation, having a discussion, we might not need any technology for that. We just need each other. So how do we design spaces that will be conductive for that?
Yeah.
In the architecture, in how we think about it.
So it sounds great, right? It probably assumes that people are a little bit more rational and logical than what Imran and maybe me think they might be. but that could be a wonderful, it could be a positive outcome from this. Ursula, I'm just thinking about, do you see other potential positive outcomes? Or are you still more on we should be thinking about the problems that were there, like suicide, like loneliness, whatever, before the pandemic?
Right now, I'm positive because the dystopia in general has not arrived yet. Of course, we have elements already of the Orwell dystopia and the Mad Max dystopia is not here. But we and I think it's a positive thing is that there could be an opening to the fact that many more people right now have faced this dilemma with the being together, the interaction, the body, what the body and the means for the feeling real and alive, and then the online life. So we will. So that could develop new forms of life, and that would be positive. Not that we should quit the tools from the technology, but it would be healthier that people were reflecting on how to invest in technological life in the future, because all what you talk about is also about, I think it would be about investment. Would we invest? I already have a friend now, and his job they have invested already in more places at home and created places at the job, and that.
So the company has invested in.
They're doing little by little, yes.
In some home.
So there are less working places now than people, so they have to be a little more home, and of course that has a reaction, also a psychological one. So yes, coming at work only when you really need to see each other, and that's a very positive, and like being together and a deep thing. But it's also, I think also it could be like a privileged thing for and making a new problem, because
so only a select few of people have access to that.
I mean, I have worked like freelance for many years, and I know, do you have a little headache? Are you a little tired this day? Oh, just let me stay home and work. I should be so social in there. Could the habits also have something good for us, like you said, Imran? Like the habits, we are habit-driven people. I'm not thinking so much about myself because I'm used to being freelance, but in general, for the population to have this more choice every day, I don't know the psychological effect of that. If maybe it will increase, like kind of depression.
Anxiety, so like more choice is paralyzing, or you're missing out on something else, or
the feeling that you really have a choice if you can stay home or go to work. I think many people would actually prefer that it was just like before, that they have to do this and that.
Okay.
Maybe it could have a positive impact also, but it could also be like causing more depression and more anxiety in the society. We already know now that it's widespread.
Yeah.
So and the other problem would be that maybe it's for privileged people. I don't think for writers there's any place we can go and be social. It's like you have to create it all the time.
Except for BLOXHUB should be open more to writers maybe going forward.
Okay, great. So okay. So, but that's great. We should be more open to that. But, yeah.
But I'm interested in what so two thoughts. One, I've talked to some folks in the disabled community, and so these are people that might have wheelchair or a physical impairment, and they'll say they've never felt more connected, because now the party or the social gathering at work that they couldn't go to because of their wheelchair or whatever, now everyone's on Zoom anyway, and they can be a part of that, right? So that's one, I think, kind of interesting angle. Older people are saying, hey, our neighbors have never talked to me before. Now people are helping. Again, as an elderly people, we've helped neighbors with their groceries and things. So there's this sort of immediate kind of sense of community that's maybe come from this, equaling the playing field through a digital medium. That's one thing, if you guys believe in that at all, or if that could be possible.
Of course.
But then this idea also of I'm interested in what you're saying of again, like new layers of privilege. So if you have the ability to go to the office or to work from home versus everyone in the service sector who now even more clearly doesn't have that choice, right? Like they're at their place of work all the time.
Yes.
So,
and there's a lot of people who like save money in the eating at work and having more comfort at work. They don't need to worry about like taking care of kids or other things that might be kind of harder at home. So we don't have the same conditions at home. We all have different homes and in different conditions. So somehow work in a way level up that or helps you. But I think what was interesting about what you were saying about the like more people going online, I think is an very interesting phenomena in how this crisis is also helping us rethink the internet, because we kind of were forgetting about the elderly. So like, okay, they're never gonna get online, so they're not part of it. So we're moving forward, and now suddenly a huge demographic had to go online to talk to their like grandkids and the family and to shop and to do their things. And now they're online. They are there, and there are a lot of people around the world. And our online platforms and services are not designed for all people. And I think that you see we see at least a lot of our clients and the people that we work with that are they need to rethink all of these platforms to also like be like elderly friendly.
Yeah.
And going forward, like we know that population is aging, and when we get to that place as well, we will be a lot of people in the demographic. And if you look at the internet as, you know, a common place, like what are the rules and what are the ways of being more inclusive, not just for like people with impairments, but also like to elders, to people that speak different languages, and so it opens up to a new paradigm as well of how are we using the internet.
So if we have more people now, elderly, that are learning how to use these tools to connect, then we might have fewer lonely elderly in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, but it's tricky. It's very tricky about the loneliness and the internet.
Or we have more addicted elderly people that are just as dependent on their
And they have a lot of time
on their notifications, right?
It's very interesting. Maybe it's also a little individual. So maybe we will see a splitting in the population of those who get even more of what they were before, like being more weak, more lonely, and those who can come through this crisis. Maybe also with the Zoom and everything. But I also talked with people who said they feel like when they put the laptop down, they feel like, he said, one friend said to me, he feel like the meaninglessness coming over to him, and he had to go fast out and meet somebody. So I think it's very individual how you feel about, do you like people saying goodbye to death to the dying ones on Zoom, on FaceTime. I mean, that's horror. So that could be horror too. Maybe it's like a good solution, or it's horror, like so unreal.
I guess it depends on would they have died alone or would they have died with human contact, right? Hoping, right? Because if they would have died alone otherwise, then Zoom's better than nothing.
Yeah.
But
Maybe.
if they would have been,
maybe, but for the child, if it could, like the people going on afterwards, I don't know if it was better. I mean, there's so many. Also, for like I've talked about before, the children. I think maybe I don't know. Have you ever worked with the spaces for children in the future scenarios? Because I think it's interesting that we know, all of us here, we knew what was before and what is now, and we can think about what will come. But they don't have that privilege.
No.
When you're a child, you're born into this. You just saw masked, and I remember my son. He was like, "Oh, they all look like elephants."
Yeah.
And what it is different to be a child, even newborn, in this.
And
so
when
what
you
do
ask
we do to show them that this is a crisis logic, and it should not be like a permanent logic we go on with?
Yeah.
And this is, yeah.
That's interesting when you ask children as well, like about the digital. They're like, "What do you mean with the digital? Like, what's that? Like, there's no distinction. It's just one experience, and some of it is digital, some of it is not." So I think also we have this distinction between the analog world and the digital world, but I think the new generations are much more. They have a more holistic view on like how they relate to technology, and their experiences with technology that are less black or white, but more like that's just the world that we're born into.
right.
Well, I think for us, like, we saw the change, and we always see the separation, and we always see technology as something that is away from us, but not something integrated. Right?
And you could argue that that's always been the case, right? Whoever was born with the telephone or with TV or with air travel or whatever, right?
And,
But maybe
and
it's
at
even
some
more-
point we humanize technology. So what's more human than a written poem? And that's pure technology. There's paper. There's language is technology. It's a technology that we created. There's a pen, but we integrated that, and there's nothing more human than a written poem. And I think eventually, artificial intelligence and all of that will also become integrated to our own humanity. Right?
Okay, good. So I want to talk about that. That's a little homo deus there going forward. There was one question maybe from...
Yeah, there are two kind of related, and then there is a third for Imran, so I'll wait till
Okay, good.
he's back on the panel. But from Christine, if COVID-19 is reshaping our use on tech, making it more intense, how does it affect tendencies around mobility, urban living, and the way we work, and in the end, our health? So it's a long question.
Go ahead and say it again.
I thought. If COVID-19 is reshaping our use on tech, making it more intense, how does it affect tendencies around mobility, urban living, and the way we work, and in the end, our health? And following up on that, Astrid asks, can it be an opportunity to start rethinking what are human needs, physical and psychological, when it comes to design daily spaces we use? Can it challenge the actual standards regarding living spaces?
Okay, those are...
Edwin has just added, there's a similar line. How might our home change in order to satisfy these new functions, i.e. workplace, study place, school, gym, etc.? How will the post-COVID home look like?
Okay, good. So those are good questions. So Imran and Lars, if you guys come up as well, I think we should have all four of us talking about that. Good. So I'm interested in this first one that's a little bit more concrete there about the home, because we haven't talked that much about home yet. But I think what's interesting is that, you could say, well, before COVID, maybe we worked from home, and now maybe you could say we live at work because we're always potentially on. And so do you have some thoughts about home going forward? Yeah.
Yeah, we have this concept of the work-life balance.
Yeah.
I describe it today as a work-life blender, where you now have to get the best smoothie out of your existence. And also, I think it emphasizes that work is not a condition, it's a mental condition, so to say. It's you choosing that now.
It's
you're
not a physical
working.
location,
It's
it's
not
a
a
mental-
physical location. It's not something you go to or you work at. It's something that's in your head. The work is in your head, and your office is in your pocket, and that means that today will not be the task, or the biggest challenge is not to make people work. It's actually to make people not work, to actually have breaks, and to stop thinking about their jobs, because I think that's where our speeder in our mental car has been like stuck.
So we need to design for people to take more of a break.
Yeah,
Sounds like a
basically.
task for Nick. Have you been thinking about that? How to encourage more?
One thought that we've been massaging is this idea that like remote work or like online work, could this become the new smoking? Like, could you get like a warning in Zoom that like, hey, you're zooming too much, it's causing you depression, anxiety, or cancer, whatever? Could we get? And you're already seeing it in ways like how the big, Facebook and the big platforms are actually understanding that it's not healthy that we spend a lot of time there, but it's healthy enough to do the things that we need to do. So we've been massaging this idea of like, could technology or the use of these technologies become like the new smoking, where you actually need to be reminded of like, you are too much in here, go out, take a walk, or focus on something else.
Yeah,
and there's already technology.
Yeah.
Like we work with a company that can like actually like analyze emotions and analyze what's the mood in
Freaking Imran out over here
no, but that's like widely available now.
Yeah.
Like people know what's the tone of a Zoom call. People know what's being talked there. They know what's the emotion. Is people angry? Is people anxious? Is people happy? So that's already there. It's happening now. We don't know what different companies are doing with that information, but potentially could also be a way of like feeding that back to us and like using it as insights to help us, hopefully live more healthy lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I very much agree. Just not on the comparison with smoking, because there are no good cigarettes. They all kill, more or less. I mean, but food is.
But some Zoom meetings are okay.
No, I mean, food is a good comparison, right? There are good food and bad food, and you become what you eat. You also become what you click, basically. So the more time you spend on certain digital products, etc., you will, of course, just like a fitness gym, you will create muscles based on what you use, basically mental muscles. But just like we learned how to deal with cars, because if cars were driven the same way as the tech giants drive their business, then you will get they would earn more money the faster you drove your car. That would mean more accidents, right? That's not how it went. It went more safe, more information, but not too much. You shouldn't have to turn on the brake in order for your car to work, right? You have to. Everything has to be serving your purposes as human beings. That's how our phones should be. Our tech should be telling us, hey, you should have a break, because we can see that your typing speed is going down. You are making more errors. We can see that your eyes are getting blurry. Your eyes are getting squared, etc.
From the face
Yeah.
scanning.
Yeah. But I think that's interesting, because I can't help but think about who's the institutions that are looking out for us, right? Because if we leave it to the tech company themselves, then how do you really trust it, right? And I think,
Yeah.
Lars, to your point about, so this exciting ability with blockchain and with, say, the food tracing, to use that concrete case, there still has to be some institution of some kind who would then govern some of that, right? I mean, we can't, so who are the institutions that have the ability to keep up with the tech?
Well, for blockchain, it's typically a consortium, right? So you can say what Food Trust was developed, it wasn't IBM developing it on its own. It was developed together with 10 founding members: Walmart, Driscoll's, Dole, Golden State Food. So representatives from the food industry, producers, distributors, food manufacturers, to all get their point of view on how do we create a solution that is adding value for all of us, right? So I think that's the kind of governance you need, right? You need the different types of users involved.
And then still the FDA or like the Food and Drug Administration, someone like that is still at the table. I mean, if I can imagine that the FDA does not know how to work with that consortium, or do they?
I think they do, because
You think they do? Okay.
I think one of the key people on Walmart on food safety actually went from Walmart to FDA, right? So, and FDA is now talking about blockchain should be used to create traceability on food, right?
Okay.
So,
Okay, so that's
it's good knowledge there.
So then I guess we'll have a talk about FDA afterwards, but but I guess in this particular question, 'cause I think it's interesting what Nick is saying. Could there be some kind of warning label? My question is still, who is giving you that warning?
But I think
Yeah.
I think that like politics have always moved slower than the tech companies. I think
Yeah.
that's an issue, and I think like we're coming like 5 years later with some regulations. So probably when like the politicians and societies like find out that we need to do that by law, like I wouldn't be surprised that there will be laws for companies on how much you should be online or not, and there's already a law in France around that. But it's always coming too late. So it's how do we make those institutions like actually be, taking the pulse of how technology is developing.
Yeah.
But politicians not using, they're actually using the platforms to like stay on their I mean they're using the media platform just to stay to get elected, etc. themselves. So they don't have an interest in shutting off that channel. But I really like the notion that Ursula said before about the pharmacare. That's how you should actually, or the tech. What do you say?
Yeah, pharmacare. That every pharmacare and every technology has always been led by instructions. If you gave young people or children a car and just said, just go the hell out of that, it will go wrong. And it's the same here. And yes, the regulations maybe are too late, but they're really going to come soon, because we know already that children are so addicted to technology. But about the other thing, about the city and the design, I think we also could think in the, electronic systems and technology in the city landscape. What if everything is going to be check-in all the time? And what kind of design language is that? That you have to have access, you have to, download something to get in. I think it's kind of, it could be interesting to work with a world, a design that is more open again, like nature. Like you go in because you just go in. You don't need to show something, and that's the world I would like to come after all this. And again, that's why I think it's so important to emphasize for young people and children from the government that this is a crisis, and this is the way we talk, the way you give orders to children and people is a crisis logic. And if we can move from that in a healthy way and invest in healthy solution and also all what we talk about, then it could be interesting to see, after we have been guiding through that in a healthy way, what can technology then do for us? But I think we should take care of making it like a quick cure, because then maybe it's too short-sighted to use it like that.
Yeah.
So
but I want to pick cool. But what I want to pick up on the city part, because we haven't talked that much about it, because this is huge, and I know there's some questions there. So, if we relate this to our built environment, city, etc., do you all see? I mean, like I said, the one argument, tech companies, right? Most of them are saying you don't have to come into work until maybe June. This is big tech companies in the US. And now everyone's speculating this will give the possibility for people to live where they want. We don't all need to live in San Francisco or New York. They can move to Montana or Jylland, Falster or wherever and be connected. So one kind of general question about, I'm curious what you guys think of, do we need to live then in cities, or will we all just appreciate the countryside and Zoom calls, and then we'll fly in for our quarterly meetings where we can have physical contact like Nick was talking about? Do we see a role for the city in the future, or was this like, are we beyond it? Anyone? Lars? I can go with
I just want to add one new technology into the discussion, because I kind of think it's quite relevant here, because we're talking about people being isolated behind their screens. When can we return to some sort of normal situation, right? We have infection numbers going up or kind of sitting at the same level, but how do we kind of facilitate coming back to work, going to the cinema, traveling again, right? So also on the technology side, Imran, you can
Attack.
you can attack afterwards, right? But IBM, also based on blockchain, IBM has developed a mobile app called the Digital Health Pass, right? And what it allows you to have a COVID test, for example, or have another test or vaccine for that matter, when we get to that point, right? And then you can have that on a digital pass and you can carry it on your mobile phone. And then when you want to go into work, you want to go into a cinema or sports event, or you want to travel at the airport, you show that, right? And because it's blockchain technology, everybody can trust the information. Whereas today, if you took a COVID test, a print, and you went in and say, okay, I want to travel, or I want to go there, would people trust you? Or could you have done something fraudulent to that document, right? So I think technology can actually help us return to something a little bit
And
more.
that might be exactly into Ursula's.
That's kind of it sounds like a little like the dystopian society with control, and you need to be on and loyal. And what about the people who has not a QR code? If I just come in and I don't have this, it's the system being very strong. I don't know. It's good and it's also bad.
And it would be a permanent change, right? It'd be this pandemic logic that you're saying, crisis logic, and then now carried with us forever to have some sort of passport or something, right?
Well,
Which could,
I mean, it's not something that's going to happen after COVID. It's actually happening already right now in China. They're already suppressing like millions of the minorities by using the exact same wonderful technology. Maybe IBM has a customer there. I mean, they're going to use it all over, right?
And then there can be errors in it too. But it's
But
we
I
have to choose the future. We are not just slaves for the future. We can also we can all think and be humans who choose what's going to happen.
yeah.
Actually, I think there's a very fundamental question here. Do we believe in free will, or is it something that needs to be contained and controlled by technology? That's the real question here. Do we believe in humans who should be able to stand up for themselves, or do we believe that humans are someone who needs to be controlled and tamed?
What do you say, Ursula?
I think that people will stay in the city if the city mirrors free will. But if we continue to make control also after the crisis, I think people will start leaving the city. And I think investment in diversities in cities, like small cafes, big cafes, not just Starbucks, can make the city more sustainable for people staying there in the future.
Yeah, I see it like as well, like that the cities are not going to die, definitely. What's exciting, I think, is that it's just allowing more ways of living to be possible. I don't believe in this going to be like a future. I believe in the multiple futures. There will be different options and different realities. Yes, a lot of people will choose to move out because that's what suits them. They could work from like the countryside and have a community there. Other ones will prefer to stay in the city. And like, you know, cities are born because we want to exchange ideas and like do commerce and do all those kind of things. And that's a very human thing that will still stay. But I think is now hopefully will allow more ways of living to be possible, and not just like if you want to make a living you have to move to the city, which has been the paradigm that we've been living for the last many decades, right?
Yeah.
But is it a privileged way of thinking? I think the same way, but maybe I hear an alarm clock saying this is a privileged, for people with privilege to choose this.
Yeah.
So there's also a class difference here in this debate about choosing this or choosing that. Not everybody can choose to work at home and
or move to the countryside,
or move to
Definitely. We have one question from.
It's actually one of the early questions because Imran, your question about free will, I think it ties very well into Cecil's question. Could you, Imran, please comment on how human tech versus technology affects the city?
Human tech versus.
Yeah, how the human perspective versus technology affects the city.
Yeah.
I think it ties quite well in with your own question.
I think if humans designed cities, they would go for experiences, emotional needs, where it felt good, restitution, things that was basically addressing our emotional system. Whereas tech would say, hey, how can we make people move more like the rational part, basically, of our brain, and turn the human beings into data points, to use that to design the city. I think we need to be able to start with the human needs and then look at the tech if there's something of use, or maybe if it's not what's needed, then you don't have to go there. Tech is just an option. It's not a fundamental part of our life.
But it seems like, I mean, there's people behind the tech, right? I mean, there's like someone
can
designing the technology, right? This is, I can't help but think that it's like our own problem, right? Because the technology itself isn't really the problem. Uber isn't a problem, or the COVID pass. It's the exploitation of it, or the human tendency to like not be able to get enough and take it to extremes.
It's not true. It's not always humans behind tech, because at some point the algorithms, they just get out of hand, and then the algorithms which are basically programmed to like optimize profit and user retention, etc. That's just like how do you think Skynet became a thing?
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying that someone designed the algorithm with good intentions.
And then they lost control.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the actually you talked about Homo Deus before.
Yeah.
Yuval Harari, he actually said that Mark Zuckerberg, etc., those guys, they created a monster, and now it's being run by Wall Street, and that's where we lost control.
Yeah. Also, yeah, okay, Ursula.
Yeah, what is the great thing about walking in a city you haven't seen before? That is the surprise. You're lost, and your feelings get stimulated, and you don't know what you meet. In algorithms, all is matching you. And there is a French philosopher called Bernard Stiegler. He says that it's causing depression in a very neurological way, because self-motivation is so important when you walk in the street, but also when you are on your online life. And he is mostly concerned about that, actually. So how could all these smart tools
losing the ability
smart?
to make some choices, like not just following Google Maps, but...
He says that we give away our memory because it's so smart. But it's all very, very smart. Of course it is, but it's too smart, because we give away our memory to the tool. We give away our motivation even in algorithms. It says to me, buy this book on Amazon. Wow, I could have been thinking that myself, but I didn't, because it told me. And that's can cause depression. In Silicon Valley too, they have the highest rate of suicides in USA.
Really?
And they have everything. So he uses that as an argument for losing self-motivation is the worst part, in his opinion. And it's interesting, I think.
Yeah, okay.
And there's not an app for that.
To regain self-motivation?
Exactly.
That
would be very ironic if there was an app to help you get unhooked on an app.
Our viewers and participants are actually getting very active.
Okay, good.
And I've been encouraging them. So
good.
Sorry, I'll speak.
The algorithms are working.
Because when we're talking about technical infrastructure and whether to work from home, it has quite a Danish slant on it. So one comment we get, a Zoom call in the countryside in Germany is impossible. So it's just when we're talking about people fleeing the city, we're talking from a Danish perspective of having an amazing technical infrastructure. And I think that's a very good point to everyone watching abroad, and thank you for that.
Right, because a Zoom call from the Danish countryside is no problem. Right? But the German internet is shockingly poor.
Stuff. And then we have from Doxy...
What?
But also another point to that, in Australia at some points the restriction have been not to go to a summer house, so they have not been able to go to the country.
The other thing is, and it's basically there is a point, and there is a question to you, Ursula, but I'll finish on that. Dongsy says, a good point. I think we need to allow technology to unfold, but ruled by people and citizens that have data literacy, and continuing with that. And it is the government's job to ensure education to everyone about their rights and how they can use technology in their interest. It's just, and then the question to you, Ursula, do you mean that we're heading for dystopia, or is it already here? Thinking of heads rustling the Swedish statistician, basically saying otherwise.
I also read a couple of people saying, no, are we in a dystopia or are we not, like Margaret Atwood and all this? And she said, no, we are not, because it's not a deliberate catastrophe we're living through. But I'm not so sure. I think we already see elements of dystopia in the fact of children's life. So because they haven't, the world, they just meet without instruction to tech, without instruction to deal with the people wearing masks, and this kind of dystopian design we're having right now, at the look of people being not having access to each other's
Facial
faces.
expressions, yeah.
We all know, of course, we can reflect, but for children, I think the world they meet is a little dystopian, and I think that just because Margaret Atwood says no, we're not having animals around the street, we're not having cars like the dystopian movies. Maybe we have a more, I would not say hidden, it sounds a little, but like a little invisible kind of.
We have cat videos.
It's like the experiment of the frog.
dystopian.
You know, when you like if you
boiling?
boil a frog slowly, it doesn't realize it. But if you throw it to the boiling water, you realize, and it feels like maybe we are like being boiled slowly, and then suddenly we're gonna wake up and it's like, oh wow, what happened? Like what
That's
happened
a
with
really
all
good
of these
example.
things?
Yeah. So what we should do is invest in waking up from this and having a more healthy and more diverse way of tackling and coping with the consequences of the crisis. If we continue like this, it is kind of dystopian language totalitarian language we're using. It is not. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, it's not totalitarianism. It's not. But the language is already there. So we should be able to distinguish.
Yeah, so in many ways, I think to look at how the future, William Gibson said that the future is already here, is just unevenly distributed. So some part of the world is experiencing the future, just like you talked about Japan before. They have like, they're like in the front when looking at marrying sex robots and all those crazy things with the aging pyramid being turned upside down, etc. So one could look at that, those burning points around the globe and see what's going on there, and to learn from those experiences instead of just like walking in the same direction, even if you can see that something is not right. I think we should learn from that. In my medical profession, we have like a concept of to find out if a treatment is good or not. When you inoculate bacteria on those Petri small dishes, so to see where does it grow. It's basically the same experiments we're doing with the COVID crisis hitting all areas of the planet, where you can see what part of the world can like deal with this kind of crisis, where rationality, if rationality was given, we wouldn't have the crisis. It's because people, they don't know they don't do what they know, they do what they tend to do. So it's a way of looking at our societies, how sustainable they are, how well informed the societies are, and also how much trust there is in our cities.
Yep.
That's the test we're facing right now.
Yes. And so I think we just need to wrap up. So if we have like 2 minutes. So if anyone would like to add anything else, I think some of my takeaways are about this question of free will. I think we can all agree that we need some trust. The question is, can it come from technology and blockchain, or does it need to come from hugs and handshakes, or maybe both, right? I think it's interesting, Nick, you brought up these different, different user groups being introduced to technology. I think that's fascinating to think about elderly perhaps being more connected, or a whole generation now of elderly that will be able to be more connected. And then Ursula, I think your point about children, this pandemic logic maybe going on for this entire generation is super interesting to think about. And I can't help but say also, Ursula, with your work as an author, I mean, our idea of dystopia, the fact that we think a certain thing, with dystopia can't be happening because it doesn't look like Margaret Atwood described or Aldous Huxley described, is ironic, because that's the only way. It's authors, it's authors that have defined what this dystopia is or is not. So I especially hope that you don't write something too freaky, because then we'll all can't help but falling into that in that dystopia, because we don't know what else to do except to sort of follow along the things that we can actually imagine. So I offered you a chance to sum up, but then I summed up instead. And
Great
now
job.
we're actually done with time, right? Yes. So I'll just thank you all for great discussion, and thanks for being here, and thanks for the people online who contributed. Thanks to BLOXHUB and all the partners. And we'll hopefully, this is the last of the series that I mentioned, so we'll see if we do some more of these. Any comments and thoughts that you all have out there will help us hopefully continue to shape discussions like this and see what we might do in the future. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Do we clap?